I want to be his friend because of his picture. I don't know Lynn, but I see him laying with the horse, and I'm all for that, you know. And that's how some of my Facebook friends I have because of being horsey. And a lot of my Facebook friends that are horsey are on a different side to where I am, and that's okay. And they stay, and I keep them because there could be a meeting of the minds. A few people had, when I said something about, well, you know, if Jesus was here now, walking down the street, Jesus would probably get beat up, thrown in jail, or maybe shot. And so people that get that, I'm cool with that. People that don't get it, well, you know, sometimes I might have a little bit more time to talk about it and explain it. Sometimes I don't. So there. That's why I said there are those levels, and one has to understand. It's like what my mom said, and I developed something, and then that's all I'm going to say. She said, you know, guilt by association, and of course, you know about being in the car, in the getaway car, and you didn't know that they robbed the bank. Still guilt by association. You have to choose. You have to choose wisely because, and for me personally, I've had a situation recently where I have had to definitely choose wisely because when you invite somebody to a game, so to say, you invite them to a game, you protect them from getting beaten up at the end of the game because you're sitting in the wrong spot. You know, you come with me, we're going to sit on the wrong spot as far as people are concerned. And then, you know, I'm letting you know we're sitting on the wrong spot, but these are good seats. You want to come? Good. You don't want to come? All right, I understand that. So it's even deeper than that. But the commitment that Alphonse was saying, if you are there, it's like what a friend would say, ride or die. If we're okay, everything is okay. But there are levels. There definitely are levels. And when you get crazy, you gone.
Oh, someone else? Are politics consequential? Does it matter? Because we're going to talk about whether it doesn't matter enough to lose a friend over. Doesn't matter at all. Eddie.
A few years ago, my protective older brother was trying to get me involved with somebody, not anybody in particular, but I was pretty particular. And this is a few years ago. I think I've brought him along a little since then, but he almost couldn't believe it when I said I couldn't possibly have an intimate relationship with someone whose politics were way off of mine. And that just wasn't even something he would have thought about then. I think now he sees the light, and I'm still single.
That happens. Anyone else care to join in?
Just on that idea of politics having consequences, absolutely they do, and that's where the issue comes in sometimes with friendships or other levels of relationships, sometimes family. Um, you can say, oh, well, we just disagree, philosophically about what the role of government should be, and that's fine, that's okay. But in some cases, one political candidate or one party or one branch of government or whatever it is may be making policies that directly hurt people I care about or me. It may be, limiting what they can do in their lives. It may be, causing them physical and mental and emotional harm. And in those cases, that's where it gets very difficult to talk about. It's one thing to say, oh, philosophically, I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican, or I'm liberal, you're conservative. But when it's something where you say, if you support this particular bill or this particular politician, this is going to hurt somebody I love, that's much harder. It's much harder to address. Although it does sometimes give you a way into a conversation to say, have you thought about the fact that if this law is passed, this person will be hurt in this particular way? Sometimes that's an opening for a conversation. But there has to be a certain level of trust, I think, before you can go there.
That's a very good thought. Hold that thought. A certain level of trust before you can get there. Critical point. Jessica.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of combine a little bit of what Naima was talking about and what Jennifer were talking about. For me, there is kind of a gradient. You know, if it's a small political difference, that doesn't, you know, grind against my morals or, you know, make me feel like it's a belief that is harmful to others, then, you know, we could probably have conversation about that. In fact, we should definitely have conversation. I would like to learn their side of, you know, what were your experiences that brought you to that political viewpoint. But then, you know, depending on where their beliefs are on that scale, you know, if it starts to become too much interfering significantly with my morals or happiness, then I probably would just be better off not having that person as a regular interaction in my life.
So how do you handle that?
I'm a big communicator, big on listening to hear, not just listening to talk. Because I do, again, want to understand, you know, what experience brought you to that point. What was your journey that brought you to that point? And help me understand it, because, you know, maybe I don't understand that, you know, some of my politics are harmful to that person based on their journey. So a learning opportunity. And, you know, I would never just instantly say, well, we're not going to be friends anymore. I just say, well, thanks for sharing. And, you know, maybe I'll see you around.
Mhm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Dr. Johnson. Your mic's off. Barb, your mic's, oh, there you go.
Better.
Yeah, much better.
It keeps telling me that the host is muting me.
Oh, they're probably trying to turn you on, and then when you hit.
Oh, okay. I think I agree with most of what people have said. Although sometimes if I really disagree philosophically with someone, I think it is a good idea to hear them out, because they may help you understand how they came to their viewpoint that seems somewhat set in stone. For example, I have a friend who is a very rabid Republican, and we were talking about the children at the border. And of course, I and many other people were concerned and outraged when we heard the children crying, and it was a very emotional time. And my friend, which I couldn't understand, was so hardline that it was okay to separate children from their parents. And he cited an example right here in Brown County, where someone went to jail and their children were taken away. They went to jail because they violated a law, which he felt that people crossing the border had violated a law. And the consequences to them was that they would go to jail and their children couldn't go to jail. That helped me. He didn't change my mind, but it helped me understand why he felt the way he did. And I think that really helped our friendship and sort of enhanced our ability to trust one another. During the last 6 months, I've had a lot of medical issues that basically forced me to leave Aberdeen, at least temporarily. And I have to say, this friend who I really argued with about the children in the cages, he's been my most loyal helper. And if I hadn't listened to what he had to say, that friendship would have disintegrated right there. So I think listening skills are really important. And when we review the people who are our quote friends, we have to take all of that into consideration.
You just made a very important point, Barb. Very important point in terms of like what you feel about that person and what they feel about you superseding what you think or what they think about issues, and how that plays an impact on how you think and whether or not you're willing even to think about their position. Again, with the caveat, there is that 4%. Okay, so
Yeah.
those people, they, for this conversation, that's a whole other conversation to have. But your point was one that's very important for us, I think, to reflect on in this question. Ryan?
I think it's a really interesting question. And it's something I think a lot of us are thinking about. I guess I have more of a question than an answer, and that is how do you separate those two things with how do you decide if somebody's politics affects your friendship? And I think that's a really difficult thing. I don't mean to like sidetrack us, but that question just turns over in my head a lot, and I was just curious like what you think about that, Lawrence, or anybody else. Like how do you make that decision?
Well, that's why we're getting at what is politics consequential.
Okay,
Because
sorry, I'm
that-
getting ahead of the conversation.
Well, that is the underlying question, you know, of your question it underlies your question is like, is any of it consequential? You know, and if we determine that it is or can be consequential, then we get into, well, if there's consequences for this, then, and we care about things, then maybe there are going to be some sacrifices. But if it's not consequential, then who wants to sacrifice a relationship? And then in between that, there are lots of gray. And that's where I think that's where your question gets to. And we hopefully we'll get back to that, because that's fundamental to this discussion. Naima, unless you had something else you wanted to add.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I guess I'm just kind of at a loss with that whole issue. So I don't really have a great answer for that question.
Okay. Naima.
With with what Paul is saying, it's, you know, there's a thing called energy vampires, and in many cases, if someone is taking, if a situation is taking more of your time than you have time to give it, then that weighs in quite quite a bit. And then like I am sorry, is it Jessica? I want to call her little one. What you know, and what others have said about listening to understand instead of to just talk. All of those things are very valuable, but at the end of the day, it depends on what you're willing to give to a particular person and or a particular relationship. Like Jennifer said, if it's hurting you, your family, your area, then if they just have the opinion and they're not going to do anything about it, well, okay, they're entitled to their opinion, and that's just how they're rolling. They're going to vote for Trump. But if they have a AR-50 whatever, and they're going to be a boogaloo, whatever those other boys are, and then they're going to go out hunting, then that's a whole nother issue. So again, it's the gradients. There's levels, And we as a human being, peoples, or we beings in a human whatever, a lot of times give up what we would consider our intuition and our power, because if the hair stands up on the back of your neck, you know that that's wrong. It's like the monkey with the banana. We want that banana. We really like this person. We want that banana, and we are trying to get it through the hole, and it's not going. And we're just, instead of letting it go, and if you could open up the cage to get it out, then it's okay. If not, then that banana wasn't good for you. We try and hold on to so much, and in doing that, we hurt ourselves. And so we have to, put our big girl boy pants on, and just let go and let the universe do what it's going to do. And sometimes, in terms of conversation, political, um, wanting to be open to people, sometimes having that conversation, just like with on my Facebook page, um, people stay around, and it's okay, because I don't necessarily have to water that seed that's planted. The universe will do that. Sometimes it's just not your job. You plant the seed, and go on, and then maybe you can come back and pick a berry here and there.
Paul?
Well, I've really enjoyed what everyone has said, and has made me really be thinking about this. But as it relates to, do politics have consequences? And so yes, absolutely. However, I think that in part of, as it relates to your friendship, there's some sort of openness and empathy. And then as I think about that in the many different forms and steps to politics, it's so disheartening that we live in a world where there is seemingly no ability for either side of the aisle to get together and to try to just listen with, just hear out what the other one is saying. And it's, and I, so as I think about my friends who have different political beliefs than I do, one, it doesn't dominate our conversations anyway, or our time together. But two, if we decide to have that conversation, I try to understand what they're thinking about, and hopefully help them understand what I'm thinking about, so I can understand them just even better. So, but again, to answer the question, yes, they do, but I don't think those consequences have to be terminal.
Okay. Alphonse? Are you there? Well, Alphonse might have been occupied. Anyway, one of the things that I think ran through the comments was, in fact, empathy. How do you feel about that person, that if we have this proverbial friend, someone who's, let's say, a composite person that we're calling friend, and that can mean something and will mean something to each of us. How, how did that person become your friend? What kind of empathy, what are the feelings that you have between you and that person? I have this kind of approach that I try to just be myself, be the person, and say the things that I feel, and people will come and go. They will like me or not. It's just, especially since I know about Dunbar's number, I know that, look, there's 7.5 billion people in the world, according to those who say they have counted. 150 out of 7.5 billion, that's not a lot of people. So, and that's the limit that I can reasonably handle. So I feel like if I can attract that 100 or 150 or so people who will just be open to some kind of relationship with me, then I don't need to be someone else to have friends. So I can have friends. I'm not going to be lonely. Now the question is, who do I want in that circle? Do I want clones of myself? Do I want people who always think the same way? Actually, I don't have much use for someone who thinks exactly the same thing as I do. That's like, I already have one of me. I want to just be, if I'm going to be unique, I don't want clones around me. And I'm insecure, but I'm not so insecure that I have to see myself and everybody that around me or else I get shaky, you know? So for me, it kind of settles out to mostly be myself. And I will make what I would call a critically thought argument in the positive sense of like a discussion, presenting data with mutually verifiable data. If a person can bring me whatever their politics is, if they can give me mutually verifiable data from a reliable source, even if I question their source, at least I know that they thought. Give me some data and then say, I put these things together and this is the picture I get. I'm okay with that. But if you say, last night I had this dream and the Chinese are coming over the Mexican border and we got to go get our guns and go fight them, then I'm thinking, maybe not. Maybe that's not the person I want as my friend. Just like the person who says, well, I need to leave this body in your bathtub for a week, and I'll come back and get it, But so I find that I have to be with people. If I can make a reasonable discussion with a person, I can handle any kind of their politics. They don't have to believe the same thing, as long as we can discuss that. But it really comes down to more than what we say. It's kind of getting to what Barb was saying before, what we feel. And I think that leads to, well, how can we have that conversation? I think the conversations can be had when there's a sense of an emotional connection between you and the other person you're calling your friend. If you don't have a sense of emotional connection, then you really don't care what they say. And if they don't have that with you, they really don't care what you say. They're in it for the argument, not for the resolution of the discussion of something. So with that kind of person, I don't know that it's worth having a discussion with such a person. Because nothing's going to come of that discussion because they don't care what you think. And if you don't care what they think and they don't care what you think, what kind of discussion are you having? Comments?
Well, I guess I need to share an update about my friend who we have very different political views. We heard each other out, and I ended up giving him a baseball cap, camouflage baseball cap that said South Dakotans for Trump. And he was at first very reluctant to wear it because he felt people would look down on him because he was wearing this cap. But in South Dakota, there are many people who feel the same way he does. And I have to say that it really improved our friendship because sometimes there may be things that you can agree on, but there may be very many other things that bolster your friendship. And those are the things that you need to focus on. So he wears his Trump cap, and I have my views, and we talk about other stuff that really adds to our friendship. And the politics is just one small part of it. And I think acknowledging that we have different views, but we can still be friends has meant everything. And he loves his cap.
Mhm. Good. Anyone else? Paul was saying he's got to run. Anybody else? Well, one of the things that I found is that really it just comes down to, mostly it comes down to feeling. If you can't get people to feel something for you, they're usually not going to hear what you say. Even if they listen, they don't hear what you say. They don't get a connection with you. So if it's going to lose that relationship, I don't know if you had a relationship once if they don't care about you, but if they do, then at least you can stay in the struggle with them and not. I think that the trick is not to insult them, and that can be tricky because some people, when you present them with facts, or if you present them with a logical argument or sources and say, okay, there's this book, and this book, and they have an emotional need to believe something that information contradicts, you have just more or less eroded the cornerstone, perhaps, the cornerstone of their existence. And that can be very frightening and very, very threatening, right? So the question is like, well, how do you approach that? Is there, my approach is to be supportive of the things that they care about as long as they're not a serial killer. You know what I mean? If the person's a serial killer and they say, hey, like, I can't kill this person by myself, could you help me out? I would have no problem in saying no. In fact, I'm going to turn your butt in, So, but that person may be upset, right? So I feel the same way when people have politics that's going to hurt people. I am not going to participate in that, and I will challenge them on that. But if nothing I'm going to say is going to make any difference, why go there? But I'm going to be campaigning and working very hard, I should say, to make sure that that kind of politics does not keep hurting people. So, and they may be feeling the same ways. Like maybe they feel like, well, the people they know, they all make $400,000 or more, and they will be hurt by somebody who comes into office that's going to tax them more, and they won't be able to get that boat, that yacht that they were planning to buy. And so that hurts those people. Me, I don't care, that they can't buy that yacht. As when there's somebody else that's hungry and they need that for that. So it's all, but we can have a conversation.
It's about doing your due diligence to have that conversation. Because if I allowed somebody to hurt overall an overall situation, then like taking that AK, I'm just as guilty. I might as well just hold my hands up, say take me to jail, because I would have pulled the trigger too. You can't be complacent in some things. And that's why I say we haven't gotten that, or we've lost that, or then next topic would be bullying, wouldn't it?
Yes, it's all about bullying.
Oh, did I say that?
Yeah, it's huge, your fault. I want to, on that same note, because I think this is critical. You know, there is this concept of the paradox of intolerance. Or is there anyone that's familiar with that? The paradox of intolerance? Okay, so the paradox of intolerance, you can put it into Wikipedia and get all of the details, but basically, I'll just give you this short statement. Unlimited tolerance must lead to the disappearance of tolerance. If we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we are not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of the intolerant. I have to, hold on a second, I have to increase the size of this thing because my eyes won't let me see it. Let me see here. Oops, here we go. Okay, now that's much better. It was like 4-point type. Okay, unlimited, or where I stop? Okay. If we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we're not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of the intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed and tolerance with them. In this formulation, I do not imply, for instance, that we should always suppress the utterance of intolerant philosophies. As long as we can counter them by rational argument and keep them in check by public opinion, suppression would certainly be most unwise. But we should claim the right to suppress them if necessary, even by force, for it may easily turn out that they are not prepared to meet us on the same level of rational argument, but by denouncing all argument, they may forbid their followers to listen to rational argument because it is deceptive, and teach them to answer arguments by use of their fist or pistols. We should therefore claim in the name of tolerance the right to be not to be tolerant of the intolerant. So you can look up the idea paradox of intolerance on Wikipedia and other books because this is a concept that goes, I think, back to Plato, you know, like in arguments about tolerance and intolerance. And I think that goes to our conversation about when we are having political discussion, you know, it's like, at what point, you know, should we accept or tolerate intolerance? You know, that is a question. I mean, we can't be intolerant completely of those who are intolerant, but at the same time, there has to be limits so that we can maintain a platform on which we can disagree.
Wasn't it Al Gore that I think for me the most recent was Al Gore when he was running for president before the Chad incident, where he was talking about that in regards to not being tolerant of the intolerant that are damaging our planet. I think that's the first time I heard about it. You know, and what are you leaving for your grandchildren? I think that was the first time for me.
So these are the balances in light of this question that we're dealing with today. These are the kind of balances that have to go into our mix of how we think about those kind of things. and I never expected to solve this here today, but I will have one more question that I think is critical to explore. And that is, how do we keep people open to, how do we keep people open to an idea or our ideas? That's to say, I've said a little bit about, and I think Barb was also saying, gave us an example of how, like, when somebody is connected to you emotionally, then there is at least some opportunity to have a discussion. So what kinds of things can we do to extend ourselves emotionally to those people who can be reached in that way?
I think one thing I've been thinking about a couple months ago, of course, here at this very channel, very station, you had a discussion with Megan Phelps Roper. And in her book, toward the end, she has 4 points for, having more civil conversations. And the one she starts with is something like, and I'm paraphrasing, but essentially, don't assume bad intent. And that's something that I've been trying to keep in mind in either face-to-face or online conversations. As you say, there's a small percentage of the population where, they maybe have bad intent and there's nothing we can do about it. But most people come to their beliefs in sincere ways that are based on whatever they truly feel. So instead of starting, by saying, oh, this person is, completely bigoted or prejudiced or whatever it is, maybe start by saying, okay, they probably have a reason for this. What I need to do is try to figure out what that is by saying, okay, what are your experiences? What is your background? What are your beliefs that led you to this particular position? And that's, of course, much easier said than done, especially if you find their beliefs really distasteful. But I think that idea of just not assuming bad intent, not assuming the worst, because we've all probably had it done to us, and we know what that feels like. If somebody says, oh, well, you believe this, you must not care about, X, Y, and Z. And instead we could express that. So I think asking questions then to try to understand where somebody got somewhere instead of making statements and making judgments and, making accusations is probably, the best way to get started on that.
I have seen that work. Just to summarize for Lee,
Yes.
we're talking about how we can stay friends with people who have different viewpoints. We could say political viewpoints because we were talking about personal relationships and politics. So that's, and we have kind of delved into like different points of that. So that's pretty much the summary. To get back to your point, Jennifer, I think, asking questions is one of the most useful things I'm learning on Facebook. A lot of people think Facebook is a waste of time. I do not. I think Facebook is one of the most useful tools for human interaction that there is. Now, if you just argue with people and just put up memes and type everything in caps, you're just missing an opportunity, But I look at it this way. If there are companies who, if collectively anyway, they spend billions of dollars a year to glean information from conversations on Facebook, not just to sell you ads, that's not really where they make their money. They make their money on providing information about how people communicate and what influences people, learning what ad to put, how to place the ad, who to place the ad to. If you place it to this person, they will influence all of these other people, and they have this particular point of view, how to notice that these people are who, how do they say, psychographics. If they have this point of view, they're likely to buy razor blades, right? If they like this team, they're likely to support this candidate. If they like this kind of food, they're likely to have this religion, right? They make those connections by watching all of the conversations on Facebook. They can make those connections, and they do, and they sell that. I figure, well, wow, if that's important enough for somebody to spend billions of dollars on, let me sit here and watch this. Let me participate. So asking questions on Facebook helps me to get to that. And so I'm developing, I think, an art, at least I like to think it's becoming an art form of asking questions and just say, okay, well, you can convince me, just here's my data, show me your data. Help me to understand why you feel that way, you know? And often people end up convincing themselves of something I never could have convinced them of because they had to ask, and they often won't admit it. That's an important point. People have a hard time saying, oh, you know that thing you said? I was disagreeing with you, but I think you're right about that. How many times do you hear that? Even when people change their mind, let them change slow. Don't force them. Give them some room to they usually just sort of slowly morph into a different position. They don't change and say, well, that thing I was thinking, that was crazy. I'm thinking this now. They morph into it.
I'm late, so I didn't get in the whole program. I was at the dentist, needless to say. And I've been listening about 5 minutes, and I put a note in there. I'd like that. Now, you said paradox of intolerance, and I could just look that up and get that summarized and read it.
That's right.
I'll do that.
That's right. Look it up on Wikipedia. I mean, you can put it in the internet, you'll get lots of things, but I find Wikipedia useful because they give you lots of sources for things. You don't have to just read that thing. They'll give you sources, and they give you counter arguments when there are those. Okay.
So I'll get resources where they're found too.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
The whole concept of when it was people.
And that statement about questions, and I'm going to refer back to Jennifer Widman. Is that correct? Yes, I was listening to that book group and that woman and have read the book and so forth. But that's basically how she met her husband. He had questioned her on Facebook. Did you remember that, Jennifer? Have you read her book?
Yes, I definitely have. And I think she has a lot to say about how certain approaches on social media gradually developed her changing her mind. And she said, it's not the people that came at me with the accusations, it's the people who came and asked questions.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late. I missed everybody's statements.
That said, I will say on Facebook, if I get the idea that people are trolls, I will unfriend them because I don't have any time for that. If people are trying to engage in conversation, then I will struggle with them. They can have exactly diametrical, and sometimes they may have a difficult time saying what they feel, but I will struggle with that person. But if I get a friend request, I would say 3 or 4 times a week, I get a friend request. Almost always it's from a woman, and then I click on to see, well, who is this person? And they're in their bikini. No, I mean, if that's all you got to sell, I'm not interested. I got to figure that's all on your page, then I just got to figure you're some kind of troll. you know, because what would make you think that I would be interested in you? Enough to be your friend. Then the other thing is somebody gets in and then they just like post things that are just like the FBI has been talking about, like the Russian trolls are going to do. Then I don't really figure there's really a point to indulge that person. But somebody I know, even when they are really different, then I think that there is benefit. Next week, I plan to have a someone who's going to be talking about a very exciting subject, sex. Actually, she's going to be talking about the importance of having conversations in our families, especially with our children, about sexual issues. And her job, she works at LSS, and she is a sexual educator with LSS. And so she's agreed to come on and share some ideas with us. Now, because she's working, she may join us late, but she's trying to work around it and join us at 10:30. So she may not be able to join us until like 11, but she's working on seeing if she can get there when we start. That said, unless you guys have something else to add, then I have to go back to fourth graders.
I think this was wonderful. I would love to see something on bullying. That's a whole nother thing, because I think that encompasses a lot.
Okay, Ryan, let's put that on our agenda. That could be an interesting conversation, bullying and how to handle it, or what do we do? You know, what are
Yes.
people's, yeah. If you don't want to be red meat for bullies, how do you handle that?
That's a good one to add. Thank you, Naima.
Yeah. Well, with that, I'm going to go back to fourth graders. It's been wonderful. We'll see you guys next week, same time, same station.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.